And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Friday, April 26th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCPodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So, we're going to start off the show. We're going to recap the NFL draft. We'll talk about Caleb Williams at the start, the couple things that the Bears did. So, we'll get into that. Them drafting Caleb Williams, as well as drafting Rome Odunze, the wide receiver from Washington. So we'll get into all that. We'll also talk about the Falcons making a surprise move in drafting Michael Penix with their first pick. So we'll get into all that and how it kind of blindsided Kirk Cousins. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll get into the rest of the picks. There was an article on Bleacher Report that had draft grades for each pick. So we'll go through each pick in the first round. And then we'll talk about A.J. Brown getting a contract extension with the Philadelphia Eagles. That'll be how we end off the show here. So, with that being said, now let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Bears and what they did on draft night. So, it really came as no surprise that they were going to take Caleb Williams. I mean, that's really what was expected all along. And I know, like, I would poke fun and be like, oh, well, you never know. Maybe they take somebody else. But no, that was not the case. There was no curveball that was thrown at us. They did, in fact, go with Caleb Williams from USC. And, I mean, again, that's what we kind of figured. The best quarterback in this draft, as most people will say. I know there's some that will disagree. I know there's people out there that don't like Caleb Williams and think he could be a bust. But, from what I've seen in the times that I watched him, I mean, you see the talent is there. And I think the Bears have set him up well to be successful, again, with the offseason that they had, as well as drafting Rome Odunze with their ninth pick. Because if you remember, I did a segment on that talking about Matt Eberflus and his excitement over the Bears also having the number 9 overall pick, too. And they went with a playmaker. And they had Rome Odunze from Washington to go along with Keenan Allen, who they acquired this offseason, as well as D.J.Moore, who they got last offseason when they made that trade with the Panthers. The Panthers getting the number 1 overall pick from the Bears, and the Bears getting D.J. Moore in that deal. So they got a trio of solid wide receivers. And this receiving core is definitely up there with one of the best receiving cores in the NFL. Now, the Bears got to go out there and prove it. And I think that they will be a team. If Caleb Williams has a great first season, I think that this team definitely could be in position to be a playoff team. Now, I don't look at them as, contending for the division. I mean, I think they'll be very competitive in the division, especially if Caleb Williams is what he is supposed to be. But if that's not the case, then, that's a different conversation. But if he ends up panning out, the Bears can be competitive, and they can definitely be in the mix to be a playoff team in 2024. But they're drafting Caleb Williams to be their franchise guy. And if he is everything that he's supposed to be, then the Bears should be a team that's in the mix and should be a playoff team. And I think that's what the Bears are hoping for, to be able to, make that jump in 2024 and be a better team going forward. And, I hope that's the case. So, really looking forward to, seeing what they're able to do. And, so I kind of wanted to just go through the stats of the two guys as well. So let me just go through that. And so we're gonna go through. We'll go through Caleb Williams' stats first. Um, so let's do that right now. And again, coming off of a season with USC, if it well now that he's in the NFL, of course it shows his NFL stats, which he doesn't have any. So yeah, I mean his final season with USC, 30 touchdowns to 5 interceptions, 3,600 yards passing, 4,500 yards passing in 2022, 42 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. So that was his best year by far. And then with Oklahoma in 2021, he had 21 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. So, yeah, I mean, listen, people call him an escape artist. So, and you see the talent is there. So, I mean, I think the Bears did well with this draft. And then I think I went over Rome Odunze's stats on a previous show, but we'll go through them again. His final season with Washington, and in the next segment we'll talk about his quarterback, Michael Penix, who the Falcons took. If I can pull that up, and yeah, so Rome Odunze in his final season with Washington, again, got to go back to his college stats. 1,600 yards receiving and 13 touchdowns. So, solid season there. And again, I mean, he's not going to be the guy because you have Keenan Allen there, and as well as D.J.Moore. So, I'm looking forward to, seeing what that trio of wide receivers can do. And again, I mean, the expectations for the Bears, it's going to be interesting because, they made the change with Justin Fields. They, they traded him, they moved off of him, and now they're, resetting the clock with this change at quarterback. And I think they should be a competitive team. And especially also, some of the other moves they made, bringing in DeAndre Swift, coming out of the backfield to go along with the running backs that they already have. I think I think the Bears should be a team that's going to be pesky to play against. But again, they got a rookie quarterback, so again, there could be some growing pains that come along with that. But it's we'll have to see. We'll have to see because again, it's it's there's, like I said, there's going to be some growing pains, and maybe they're a team that towards that, like later in the season, Caleb Williams really starts to find it, and maybe they make a late run to maybe make the playoffs. So, yeah, but we'll have to wait and see what happens there. So, but I mean, again, there was no surprise there. We knew the Bears were going to do this, and that's what ended up happening. So, now they got their quarterback, and also we'll talk about the Vikings and what they ended up doing, which, I tried to make a bold prediction, but it didn't pan out. Now, the Vikings did end up, trading up to get their guy, but not, it was a little bit later, as opposed to trading all the way up to 4 to get their guy. So, and I liked what my team did, and we'll get into that in about a little later in the show. So we'll talk about the Giants. I'll talk about every team, what every team pretty much did. It was kind of weird though, because how the draft unfolded, because it was all offensive players for like the beginning part of the draft. I forget who broke the chain, but you had the quarterbacks go, then you had the receivers, and then you had the you had offensive linemen going, and then we started getting defensive players. So it was interesting because I don't think I don't think that's happened where it's been like all offensive players for a while and then finally a defensive player, because defensive players could be in the mix usually. I don't know. I mean that's just coming from me. So I'm not. Again, when we go through all the picks, I'll go into more detail with that. But yeah, I thought at least like with the New York teams, I thought they both did the right things, in my opinion. Um, Kind of, we'll talk about it later, but what the Bills did as well, I thought was interesting. So, um, yeah, it's at but that's only night one. I mean, we got two more nights to go. So, um, I'm excited for what's next. We didn't have any big trades go down, like in terms of um, like Brandon Ayuk being traded or T Higgins being traded. Like none of that happened, but uh, we'll see what happens in night two because the 49ers did take a wide receiver. They did take a wide receiver, and so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Maybe it ends up happening, tonight. If they maybe decide to trade him. So again, that's something we'll have to, look into and see if that ends up happening. But pretty much all the big names at quarterback went. Again, we'll talk about what the Falcons ended up doing and the hilarious video that was posted on Twitter or X, sorry, but I'm still gonna call it Twitter because did not look good for the Falcons GM. But again, we'll talk about it in the next segment. But again, with the Bears, I really like what they've done this offseason. But now again, they just got to go out there and prove it. And I'm looking forward to see what ends up happening. And it's going to be hopefully a fun season for their fans because they desperately want that. They in 2018 they were a good team because of their defense, and Trubisky had an okay year in 2018, but this team, if Caleb Williams is that guy, this team has a chance to do big things for years to come. And I'm looking forward to see what this offense is able to do. Again, the trio of wide receivers, this is definitely one of the best receiving corps in the NFL. And we'll see how they, play together with their new quarterback. But again, you got to like what the Bears have done, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, again, we'll see what they do, and yeah. So, when we come back from our first break of the show, we will talk about what the Falcons did. Kind of a shocker, and that is what they ended up taking a quarterback with their pick. And we'll talk about that. I'll give you my thoughts on that, and that is what we will do when we come back from our first break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.